Hey family, I'm Ron Simmons. Many Christian YouTubers are teaching people to view the law in a way that is absolutely, totally, and biblically wrong. And we need to talk about that in just a minute. The digital mission field is the most important mission field of our time. And you can help evangelize in that mission field by sharing this, liking, commenting, and subscribing. I saw a post recently called Danger, Do Not Tithe. And the video had two main points. The first one was tithing is dangerous because if you do it, you may be compelled to follow the whole law, and thus you would nullify your salvation. And number two, Jesus never commanded us to tithe, thus it is not a must. That was the word that was used often in the post. So let's take a look at Galatians chapter 5, and let's kind of begin to break this down. And here's what it says. Again, I declare to every man who lets himself be circumcised that he's obligated to obey the whole law. You who are trying to be justified by the law have been alienated from Christ, so you have fallen away from grace. So let's be clear. Paul in this text is in context speaking about those who were considering circumcision, not just to be circumcised, but specifically to try to uphold the obligation to the law. They were under the impression, because of false teaching, that getting circumcised was going to fulfill an obligation to God that would make them be saved. And so he's talking about not trying to hold on to or depend on the law for your salvation. But what he's not teaching is that the law is somehow dangerous and needs to be avoided at all costs, lest you somehow fall into a position where you nullify your salvation. That's not what he's teaching at all. Just think about this for a moment. One of the things that is in the law is love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. Do you think that that text is dangerous and that you should avoid it at all costs, lest somehow you nullify your salvation? Absolutely not. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So the other half of this argument is, well, loving the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul is a part of the law that Jesus repeated. So then we're to believe that if Jesus repeats a law, we're obligated to that? How is that any less free from the law? That doesn't make sense either. See, these kinds of questions pose a real problem in the face of what the Bible actually teaches about the law. Let's take a look at Galatians chapter 2, verse number 16. Here's what it says. Know that a person is not justified by the works of the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ. So we too have put our faith in Jesus Christ that we may be justified by faith in Christ and not by works of the law, because by the works of the law, no one will be justified. The operative word in this text is justified. It's used several times by the Apostle Paul in this text, and justified means to become or be made righteous. And so what Paul is saying in the text is, no one is made righteous by the law, but rather we're made righteous by our faith in Jesus. So then what value does the law have? Paul said to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse number 8, we know that the law is good if one uses it properly. So there is a proper use for the law. Here's why. Romans 7:12 says, so then the law is holy and the commandment is holy, righteous, and good. Family, the law is good. You're not saved by the law. You're not justified by the law. You're not being judged by the law. But that doesn't change the fact that the law is good. Here's a perfect example. So Paul did a lot of writing against the idea that false teachers are spreading that you had to add to this faith circumcision. Now, no one gets circumcised for the law with the exception of Jews, at least in the United States of America, yet most males born in the United States of America get circumcised. Why? Because circumcision is good for what? In regard to bacteria, infections and diseases. See, the law always spoke to what was good, not just spiritually, but practically, not just practically, but spiritually. And we need to understand that fully. The same is true with the tithe. Or let's say it this way, for the sake of legalists, the same is true with sacrificial giving. Listen to this text right here in Genesis. This is Genesis 4, 6 and 7. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." What wrong did Cain do for God to be talking to him about what is right, for him to be talking about being accepted, for him to be talking about sin being at your door? Let's be clear. Cain had not killed his brother yet. What God was talking to Cain about in this text is his giving. He made an offering, a sacrificial offering, and the offering was unacceptable to God because it was insufficient. What's interesting about this text, especially for people who want to get into these conversations about, oh, tithing before the law, tithing in the law, tithing after the law, Jesus didn't say it, who cares if Melchizedek received the tithe? If anybody who wants to have all of those discussions, let's be clear, there's no religion here when Cain and God are having this particular discourse. There's no law, there's no Bible, there's no priests. None of that exists. This is just simply God expressing an expectation he has of appreciation in the form of sacrificial giving. And I always remind people that one of the things this text really reveals, that if Cain brought something that was unacceptable, that nothing is totally unacceptable. And it doesn't matter what covenant we're under, right? At least in terms of when it comes to good. Because again, the law at this point is of value because it always reminds us of what is good. You don't have to tithe to be saved. You're not justified by the law. But if you were to ever ask yourself, what's a good minimum for me to give to God? The law shows us what's good. What I really find unfortunate about what a lot of content creators are teaching right now is that, number one, people who love money more than God, they want to hear, I don't have to tithe. And people who money is their God, they want to hear, great, I don't have to tithe. People whose love of God amounts to what's the bare minimum I can do and still make it to heaven, they would love to hear, we don't have to tithe. And it's true, you don't have to. However, the question is, what's good to do? In the face of what Cain brought, 10% is good. And the law teaches not what's required of Christians, but at minimum, what is good. I hope this has been a blessing to you. Please, if it has, share it with someone, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when my next video comes out. I love you guys. Peace. God bless.